everybody. Welcome to history class. This is Unit 11, lesson number 8. But pay attention here, this is recording number 7. So in this lesson, we'll cover chapter 49. You should have completed lesson 6 the last time, and you should have completed the quiz for Unit 11. So up here on the screen here, what I have done is just thrown up the schedule for you again, just to remind you where things are. And if you need to take note of any of this, you can pause the recording to make any notes on this that you want. But pretty much, remember, all of our directions are here in your online school if you need any directions. Up until today, all of our lesson numbers matched our recording numbers. But starting today, we're going to be off a little bit because there is no lesson 7, because lesson 7 is our quiz. So we skip lesson 7 and go to lesson 8, but this is recording number 7 on the schedule. So I hope that's not too confusing for you. And again, remember what color you are, and remember what you have to complete depending on when your PSSA schedule is. Okay, so this is just another reminder of the order in which things are going. If you want to pause and read through this slide right here real quickly, go ahead and do that. Okay, so here's what we're going to be working on today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the United States and the participation in the Vietnam conflict, and we're going to identify a few different things that kept the U.S. from achieving its goals in the Vietnam conflict. So let's just talk a little bit about what's going on in the area, because we haven't talked about this in a couple of days. This is the time period is between 1967 and 1969, and we're going to talk about a lot of things that are going on in the area of Southeast Asia. When the United States decided to become involved in this, we did find out that it was very costly to us. And that started to pose a lot of problems because many of the programs that President Johnson had proposed in his Great Society plan had to be cut now because they just didn't have the money for them. And the other problem that presented itself is because of the U.S. spending money outside of the country, people inside of the United States were suffering because that money had to come from somewhere. So a lot of programs were cut that hurt people. And it was this phrase came about here, guns or butter, because it was sort of a metaphor for the problem that was happening. Did the United States want to be spending its money on guns to fight a war, or would it be better served for them to be spending money on things that people needed at home to survive? And sort of butter became the representative item for that. So think about, do you want to fight a war, or do you want people at home to be able to eat? So it became a real problem for President Johnson. So let's go back and just sort of remind ourselves, why was the U.S. even involved in this in the first place? Remember, the Vietnam conflict started as a civil war. What's a civil war? Think about what that is for a minute. Well, a civil war is a war that happens inside of a country. Okay, so when it started, Vietnam was one country that eventually split into two parts. And it started as a conflict between those two parts of that country and how they wanted to govern themselves. But remember, at this time, the United States is still involved in this Cold War. And see if you can remember what the Cold War was all about. Think about that for a minute. So remember, this Cold War is this struggle between the United States and the communist countries sort of led by the Soviet Union. And it's a conflict between free democracy and communist rule. And the Vietnam conflict became the same struggle. One part of the country wanted to be a free democracy, and the other part was leaning toward communism. So it ended up pulling these superpowers into yet another conflict because of this Cold War that was going on between them, just like we had seen in Korea. Same type of thing. All right, so here is a really good video that kind of summarizes the Vietnam War in just a couple of minutes. So grab the link. It will pop up in your Edpuzzle video here just in a moment. Watch this video. You can pause the recording while you watch and then come on back. Okay, so all of this conflict, and here is poor President Lyndon Johnson with all these worries and all these decisions to make. What is he supposed to do? So he has his own thoughts, but then on the other side, he has these hawks versus doves. Remember, we talked about them before. The hawks are the ones who want to go fight the war. And the doves are the ones that say, no war, no way. And then this little cartoon down here is sort of making a joke of it, how there were hawks and then there were doves, and then they kind of joked that there were these other group of people, roosters, that couldn't make up their mind if they supported the war or not. So, but at home, this debate became very heated. It was heated in Congress, in the White House, and across cities all over the United States. And so he has to consider now, is this conflict that we're involved in Vietnam worth pursuing for the United States? What is the end result going to be for us? How is it going to benefit us? But at the same time, he has to remember, he's thinking back to, well, you know, the previous presidents supported this conflict in Vietnam. It had been going on for a long time. And then we have to consider, remember that domino effect that we worried about? If one country falls to communism, others will follow. And then, you know, he didn't want to appear to be soft. He wanted to be known as a tough president, and he wanted the world to respect him. And so all of these things, then he's worried about this Ho Chi Minh guy who at that time was running this uprising. What if he turns into another Hitler? You know, this whole World War II thing is still fresh in our minds. So a lot of things. Should we pursue or should we cut our losses and quit? All right, so while this whole decision making is going on and all these arguments, hawks versus doves, are happening, a big event happens that helps President Johnson make up his mind. It is called the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Okay, so I want you to pause the video or pause the recording once this video link pops up for you. Watch this video link and then we'll come back and talk about it. Go ahead and watch. Okay, so as a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident, Congress signs the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. And basically what this does is gives Johnson the authority to declare war now on North Vietnam. Now, what we find out later is that this Gulf of Tonkin incident was sort of overblown and the United States sort of overreacted to it. And there was this sort of a controversy over, did it really happen, or did we just act like it happened so we could officially declare war? So at any rate, Johnson declares war and we are officially in Vietnam. This happened back in 1964, and by 1965 the United States was all in. And if you go ahead and read through this page a little bit, you're going to see we have hundreds of thousands of troops in Vietnam starting in 1965 and increases every year. after until the end of the conflict. So Vietnam becomes known as the biggest regret in United States war history. In the end, we sent more than 500,000 soldiers into battle. And all the while, people at home never really understood why we were involved in this war. And then once the United States got into this Vietnam jungle, which was, it was very similar to what we saw in Korea. It was difficult fighting for the Americans, different environment than we were used to being in. And once we were there, we didn't know how to get out. But over the course of several years, things just escalated. The war got more intense. The United States dropped more bombs in Vietnam than they did all during World War II. And soldiers who were fighting there became confused also. Not only did the people at home not understand why they were there, many soldiers who were sent there to fight, they didn't understand what they were fighting for. And a lot of these men came back from the war in terrible mental anguish. They were depressed and angry and confused, and people at home did not treat them nicely when they came back. And many of them had hard home lives, and some of them even turned to drugs or alcohol. So it really was a big regret for us. So while this national nightmare of Vietnam is going on, the U.S. is sending more and more soldiers there. We're not making any progress. We're not winning this war. And it was a lot of bad decisions were being made. At home, lots of citizens in the United States began protesting, especially young people on college campuses. They were against the war. They didn't want us to be there anymore. And young people were getting afraid of being sent away. They didn't understand it at all. So protests grew all over the United States. All right, so really quick, I want to have you watch one more video clip here, just sort of a recap about Vietnam. The link will pop up here in a second. You can pause the recording while you watch that. Go ahead and watch. Okay, so what do you think? The Americans wanted to get out of Vietnam. Why? Look at your answer choices and think about what you think is the best answer. Is it because it was costing us a lot of money and lives? We were backing corrupt leaders who were not supported by the Vietnam people. We had our own issues to deal with in America, and we shouldn't be looking elsewhere. Or is it all of these? What do you think? Well, I think if you said D, all of these, then that would be the correct answer. All of these things were the reasons why people were protesting the war and why they wanted the United States to get out. So we will continue learning more about what happens with Vietnam in our next few lessons. We're going to pause here for today. Here's your list of things to do. Sort of out of order here, but make sure you read chapter 49 in your book. Complete graded assignment 1108 in your online school. And grab those study guide questions from the online school in lesson number 8 and complete those for chapter 49. Now remember, because the last lesson was lesson 6, we should have done our quiz after lesson 6. If you have not done that, you can do that today. Or if you want to wait and do it on Friday, you could do that too on catch-up day. It just needs to be completed before we take the unit test. So as always, if you have any questions, send me an email, let me know. Otherwise, we are finished, and I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you again tomorrow.